Hi. Aloha from Hawaii. All right, so kind of in between now, I just finished doing videos on the whole course. Basically, it took well over a year, and I'm gonna start again soon. And we're gonna say this is the 50th anniversary celebration, and I have low battery, so I might have to make this shorter. I see this video, this is going to be in 3 parts. The first part is reading the official story from the acim.org website. And then the next part is going to be questioning the story, and maybe a third part too. So let's read about what the website says. Why are there so many different versions of A Course in Miracles? Okay, we're going to read this official statement from the whoever, I guess, the Foundation for Inner Peace, or have to see who actually wrote this statement. But this is like the official, you might say, canonical version of the story of why there are different versions, and then we're going to question the story. And let's just say that we live in an age of questioning these types of things, conspiracy theories, you might say. There are conspiracy theories about how A Course in Miracles came to be, although some people might not call them conspiracy theories. And I don't tend to put a whole lot of stock in conspiracy theories, except there are cases where the official story does not add up, and that doesn't mean that the conspiracy theory is true, but we can just say that the official story does not make sense. Let's take one example that just happened. September 10th, Charlie Kirk was assassinated. That official story about the lone shooter, Tyler Robinson, does not add up. And many people have said that. Um, if you've been following it at all, obviously Candace Owens has been uh, coming up with plausible a story that might make more sense. I don't completely believe that either, but I think the whole thing about there being that one shooter does not add up. So so we might say the same thing, with, of course, it might get to that point, and some people obviously already feel this way, that the official story of A Course in Miracles does not add up and does not make sense if you really look at the facts. So let's look at this again. I've looked at it in the past. I'm a little bit more skeptical now. I'm ready to be open more to hearing the other side than I was. But I will say this as well, that I also think that we also have to look at whatever ideological investments people have in these things as well, and we can't take anyone's I don't think it's fair to privilege any one thing over another. And at the end of the day, we really don't know. That's what I would say, and I don't think we're going to be able to know. And then the question is, well, what do we do then, right? If we don't know what really happened, does it matter? So let's read the official story, and then we'll talk more about this. A Course in Miracles began in 1965 with Dr. Helen Schucman's hearing a voice that said, "This is A Course in Miracles, please take notes." And take notes she did for 7 years. She recorded what she heard in stenographers' notebooks using her own personal form of shorthand. She would then read the material aloud to her colleague and supervisor, Dr. Bill Thetford, who would type everything on his typewriter. The material came through without titles, punctuation, or paragraphs, and Helen made rather arbitrary decisions about where these should be placed. This early first draft of the course is known as the Urtext, from meaning original in German. Helen retyped the manuscript twice, correcting errors, and, as per instruction by the voice of Jesus, removing passages that did not belong, such as discussions related to the fields of psychology or material that was personal to her and Bill. This included answers they received to questions they had asked of the voice. This material, located mostly in the first 5 chapters of the text, had been helpful to them early in the process, but was clearly never intended to be part of the curriculum. The editing process was always performed under the guidance of the voice of Jesus, who specifically told Helen what to remove. In 1972, Helen and Bill prepared a copy of this first fully edited draft and gifted it to Hugh Lynn Casey, who had been very encouraging to Helen in the early days of her scribing. Hugh Lynn was the son of sleeping prophet, quote unquote, sleeping prophet Edgar Casey, and succeeded his father as president of their organization, the Association for Research and Enlightenment, or ARE. It was made clear to Hugh Lynn that this manuscript was not to be shared, and he agreed to store it in a locked vault in the ARE library. This draft of the manuscript came to be known as the Hugh Lynn Casey version of the course, or HLC. Bill and Helen initially regarded the scribing of the course as a response to their personal needs and therefore considered it private and for their own use only. But as they began to share it with a few other trusted individuals, it became clear that the course's appeal was broader than they could have imagined. It dawned on them that perhaps the course might be a benefit to others, which meant that it would need additional editing in order to produce a better organized, more easily readable work. Dr. Kenneth Wapnick, who would become a well-respected teacher of the course and the founder of FACIM, the Foundation of A Course in Miracles, was shown the Hugh Lynn draft in 1973. After reading it through twice, he agreed that some additional editing was in order, particularly with regard to Helen's rather idiosyncratic capitalization and chapter determinations. Bill disliked the editing process and stepped aside while Helen and Ken began the difficult task of going through the entire manuscript together, word by word, always consulting with Jesus whenever in doubt. Ken did not, quote unquote, take over the process or force changes on Helen, as some have suggested. Those who knew Helen and her relationship to Ken find the idea laughable. Helen was petite but powerful, a force to be reckoned with, and Jesus always had, quote unquote, the last word. The result of this editing and reorganizing was an initial print run in August 1975 of 100 photo offset copies, closely followed by 2 more such printings for a total of 300 copies. This edition was copyrighted under Judith and Robert Scutch's Foundation for Parasensory Investigation, which shortly after was guided by the Voice, quote unquote, the Voice, to change its name to Foundation for Inner Peace. These photo offset copies came to be known as the Criswell edition, named for a friend of Judy's who helped to orchestrate the printing. As more people discovered the course and began sharing it, demand for the books grew exponentially. Finding a publisher who would agree to publish such a large and unusual work without making any changes was proving to be difficult. Finally, Helen, Bill, Ken, and Judy decided to ask Jesus who should publish it. The answer they received was that only those who would make this their sole occupation and who would remain its stewards for the rest of their lives should publish it. Apparently, the 4 of them were to become publishers. The first edition, hardcover in 3 volumes, was published by the Foundation for Inner Peace in June of 1976. A second edition, which included the preface, clarification of terms, a number of additional corrections, and a much-needed annotation system for referencing citations, was published in 1992. A mass-market paperback was issued in 2004. The combined third edition, which included for the first time, the Song of Prayer and Psychotherapy supplements, was published in 2007. In June of 1996, Penguin Books, the Foundation for Inner Peace, and the Foundation of Course in Miracles filed a lawsuit against an organization known as Endeavor Academy for infringing on the copyright by publishing ACIM inappropriately. For example, combining the course with material from the Bible, a violation of Jesus's explicit instructions to keep the course intact. In the process of this litigation, Ken mentioned in a deposition that an early draft of the course was kept at the Association for Research and Enlightenment, and that copies of the Urtext and Helen's notebooks were on deposit at the Library of Congress. At some point following this deposition, someone removed the earlier draft of the HLC text from a locked room at the ARE library, copied it, and allowed it to be published under the title Jesus' Course in Miracles. Someone also quote unquote borrowed and copied the notebooks and Urtext from the Library of Congress in violation of federal law. These were then distributed widely on the internet and subsequently published in book form by other organizations. The Foundation for Inner Peace has never been guided as part of its mission to publish these early rough drafts. In 2004, the judge in the Endeavor case ruled that the 1975 copyright to the first edition, the Criswell, was invalid due to evidence presented at a trial that it had been distributed prior to the copyright registration. The Foundation disputes this finding. The judge's decision, however, did not apply to the Urtext, the HLC, or Helen's notebooks, contrary to what some have claimed. This confusion was compounded by the posting of a document on the internet that was crafted to look like the official judgment of the court and appeared to invalidate multiple Foundation copyrights, but was in fact fraudulent. In the wake of the copyright decision, other editions of the HLC were published under the titles A Course in Miracles, Original Edition, and A Course in Miracles by Jesus. In 2017, the Circle of Atonement published an annotated edition of A Course in Miracles based on Helen's original notebooks. In 2014, in a subsequent lawsuit against Endeavor filed in Germany by the Foundation for A Course in Miracles, FACIM, the High Court at Frankfurt am Main ruled that, contrary to the U.S. decision, all earlier drafts and editions of A Course in Miracles remained under copyright by FACIM. That same year, FACIM transferred its copyrights back to the Foundation for Inner Peace. What this means is that the Foundation's copyrights to Helen's notebooks, the Urtext, the Hewlin version, and even the first 1971 Criswell edition include any translation, I guess it means including any translations, remain valid and enforceable throughout the European Union. All of the Foundation's official translations of the course were independently copyrighted and so remain valid throughout the world as well. That's probably more information than you wanted to know, but it should help explain why there are so many different versions of A Course in Miracles available today, which leads to the next obvious question. Which version of the course should a student use for study? Which version is the correct one? Which is the best? All right, I'm going to read that, and then we might call this a video, and maybe the next video actually will be me commenting on this, or I might comment a little bit now if we have time. All right, the Foundation's view is that any version of the course can bring about the mind change and shift in perception that is the course's goal. A student who is sincere in the desire to learn the inspired message of A Course in Miracles will do so with the help of their inner teacher, no matter which version of the course they use. Do we believe that our Foundation edition is the form of A Course in Miracles that Jesus intended to go out into the world? Yes, we do, as did its two scribes, Helen and Bill. They fully approved the publication of the first edition. Bill studied and taught from it for the next 12 years, right up to his death in 1988. Proponents of the other versions contend that the editing process eliminated valuable information and somehow degraded the course's teaching. Some have actually counted up the number of words edited out of each edition as if word count were the most valid indicator of authenticity. But the question we ask every student to consider is this: after spending 7 years faithfully scribing the course according to the exacting instructions of Jesus, why would Helen and Bill suddenly decide to, quote unquote, reverse course, defy his voice, and misrepresent him in the final, fully edited edition? Doesn't it make more sense that in the beginning Helen was anxious and new to the process and made some errors? Also, that she and Bill asked many questions about matters such as psychology and their own personal circumstances that were extensively answered, but were never intended to be part of the course proper. This would explain why most of the significant changes from the earlier drafts are to be found in the first 100 or so pages of the text. The majority of the text, along with the workbook and manual for teachers, remains practically identical across all versions. All that said, we are well aware that the world of form is but illusion, and that, as the course itself says, quote, words are but symbols of symbols, unquote. It is not the form that matters, but the content. And then they end with, those who seek controversy will find it, yet those who seek clarification will find it as well. All right. I'll just say a few words, and then the computer might shut off, or maybe I should end this before the computer shuts off. I don't know. I'll just say, reading that over just now, I tend to think, there was, first of all, the the person that whoever put it out on the internet, they copyright they copied the ARE edition, the Hugh Lynn KC edition, and then they borrowed and copied the Library of Congress materials, and then they put it out on the internet. Well, you know that's problematic, right? First of all, it's a violation of federal law to take from the Library of Congress like that. So I understand that how the Foundation for Inner Peace would be very upset about that, right? Um, on the other hand, we do have to ask, why were they not allowing that material to be published, or to tell people more about that material, and were they not telling the truth about what was in that material? And let's also keep in mind that when Ken Wapnick wrote his book about Helen, Absence from Felicity, he did include a number of passages from the Urtext in his book. So he did, and I think that book came out in 1990. We'll have to check the date, 1991, 1992. I forget the exact date of when that book came out. Um, but I still tend to think that um, the official story, it makes more sense to me, and I will explain why. But we'll go through the counter arguments in maybe the next video. Yeah, probably the next video, and I will say more in that video as well. And I hope this is a little bit helpful just to get the ball rolling on this interesting question. And I think we could ask, does it really matter in the end? According to what we just read, the foundation says no. You could read any version, and any version, even versions that we don't approve of officially, and you'll still get the essence of the course. Because what does the course say? It says really what matters is your sincere desire, right? Your willingness. If your willingness is there, any version is going to help you. And the official story or the official version is that the content of the course is still there, even if the form is different. And then some people would argue with that. Some people say, well, Ken Wapnick especially changed not just the form, but the content. And that's what we have to talk about. Um, I tend to think that the essential content is still there, no matter what version you read. So anyway, let's wait for the next video. We'll get more into it. All right, thanks for listening, and would love your comments. See you soon. Bye bye.